Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Zero Hour. I, as always, am your host, Richard RJ Eskow. The IRA is many things, and we are all still in the process of deconstructing it and predicting its impact. But among its many states of being is a poke in the eye, or hopefully more, to Big Pharma. And here to talk about that with us now is my good friend Alex Lawson. Alex is the executive director of Social Security Works. He is also the author of a number of opinion pieces, including a great one that ran recently in Common Dreams with the headline, "The IRA is Big Pharma's First Defeat. Let's make sure it's not the last." So first of all, Alex, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. I love being here.
Well, we love having you. And Schadenfreude, good time, bad time, great time.
Yeah, I actually spent the hour when the bill was being signed into law outside of Pharma, the actual lobby group for the pharmaceutical corporations, outside of their offices in DC, interviewing people, just people walking by. And in like 15 minutes, all I did was just ask if people wanted to send a message to Pharma, knowing that they had just spent $100 million fighting to keep our drug prices high, and had lost, that there was more to do, but that they had lost. And yes, we had some takers, because just like if you're walking down the street, you're going to pass someone who is being harmed by Pharma. And so I was getting a lot of joy out of doing that, because also everyone who was coming out of Pharma's offices, we also asked them if they wanted to take part in our action, which they didn't. But I had two goals: raising up the real stories and the real harm that Pharma causes with their high prices, and also to make sure that Pharma knew that we were celebrating them losing right to their face. So that is maybe that's like a special form of Schadenfreude, and the Germans probably have a word for that too, like actively seeking that out, and being like, ha, Pharma, you've $100 million, 1,500 lobbyists, and sure, they did poke a bunch of holes in the bill. We know that.
Right.
But they lost. And my obsession of the concept that's introduced now is this maximum fair price. So the government in Medicare on some drugs, and that's because of Pharma that they limited the universe, but Medicare finds the maximum fair price, and then they negotiate to pay that price. All of Pharma's arguments, their legal arguments, are based on this claim, this ridiculous claim, that the government does not have the expertise in pricing that it needs to know whether, killing people with high prices, in the case of insulin, literally, their argument is, well, you don't know that this price is too high because you don't have the expertise to judge that. And all of that crumbles when we say, well, the government now has the expertise to find this maximum fair price, and use this maximum fair price on some drugs. So that means it can find the maximum fair price on all drugs. And obviously, they can't just pick and choose. No one should be paying more than the fair price. That's the goal of what we're hoping to be a series of losses now, hopefully accelerating as well, as politicians really start to truly understand how good it is to fight with Pharma, that you shouldn't be afraid of them fighting with you at all. You should welcome it. As FDR said of Wall Street, welcome their hatred, because the people hate them. So when the people see Pharma attacking a politician for lowering their drug prices, the people want to vote for that politician. And we're starting to see that. We actually saw Mark Kelly, who's running for re-election in Arizona in the Senate. He took their attacks and he tweeted it out being like, this is what Pharma is saying about me, well, bring it on, because the constituents I serve are the people whose drug prices I just lowered. So it really is it's a possibility. And Richard, I don't like to put on rose-colored glasses, and Pharma is super powerful and evil, but it really does feel like it could be the start of a virtuous cycle where politicians start doing the right thing, whether it's because they really think that they need to lower drug prices, or just because it's the politically right thing to do. And I think we'll see this when we start seeing Republicans breaking away and voting to take on Pharma. And I think that, that time is probably not that far away. And once that's happened, I think their whole system crashes. And again, I know you know this, but unlike a lot of other things, like hospitals and insurance, just they've got their own complexities. Like insurance is just giant parasitic middleman. But Pharma's is the unique one in that it's all because the government protects their business model with patent monopolies or allowing them to otherwise use monopoly pricing. But it's entirely reliant on the government protecting their ludicrous business model of taking the drugs that we develop with our taxpayer dollars and then selling them back to us at the highest prices in the world. As soon as that jig is up, then I think, people are going to be sort of shocked that we let this stupidity continue for as long as we have.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, sort of teasing through some of the things you said, Alex Lawson, starting with, the word, I'm sure the Germans have a word for it. We have a word for it too. It's called gloating. And I want to go back to that before we're done, just because it feels good to gloat about beating big pharma. And we've had a tough a few years. We all have. So, we deserve to feel good. So hopefully we'll go back to it before we're done. But this concept, first of all, of a minimum fair price, but then of the IRA bill overall. As you know, there has been, on the left, a lot of debate about how good is it, how much of an incremental step forward is it. You and I have kind of lived through, and a lot of people have lived through the ups and downs of trying to get Medicare price negotiation, restricting out-of-pocket Medicare and other drug costs. As you say, we lost some things on the way to the passage of this bill. And some people point out, as you pointed out too, that the negotiation on these drugs doesn't begin for several years, and it's initially restricted to a list of 10 drugs, and 10 most expensive drugs, though, as I understand it, 10 high cost drugs, but still 10 drugs. So I guess what that gets to, particularly with the concept of a minimum fair price, is the way I look at this one is it's a crack in the facade, the formerly impenetrable facade of big pharma. I think other people look at it and say, well, it's only 10 drugs. To me, it's, that first step. And I'm not always, as you well know, an incrementalist by nature. I'm not, I'm usually one who says, tear the whole thing down. But it seems to me, once you've established a couple principles, one, that pharma can be beat, two, that you have a drug list and therefore you can add to it for negotiation, and three, that there's a concept by which you lower prices. Now, it seems to me that that means this bill is a win, not as an end point, but as a starting point for battles to come. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. That's what it is. And just one thing, is the maximum fair price. So that's the most that they'll
right,
pay.
Of course. If it were a minimum fair price, I would be shooting myself in the foot.
And I won't go into all of the wonky glory of the floors versus ceilings fights that we have all the time. Some of the most consequential ones. There was one. All right, I just said I wouldn't do it, but here's the nerdy one. There was one that they did where Pharma had drilled a hole in the bill and had it up to 50 drugs. So it used to be at least 25, and then they went up to 50, but zero is in there up to 50, right? So this is one of industry's favorite tactics to make something, they turn a floor into a ceiling, and
Right.
we're always trying to turn their ceilings into floors. And the Senate actually came back and fixed that, and then they gave it a really great name. They called it the rogue secretary loophole. And I was like, all right, I'll call it that. That is what it was. It demands that every secretary negotiate a number of drugs so that they can't not negotiate drugs. And then what you said is exactly correct. So that's great, because now you want policy to be as automatic as possible. There's always going to be a lot of discretion, but industry wants to basically leave it all up to the secretary. If they don't want to do anything, but then they want a ton of discretion in there, because you remember the last secretary was Alex Azar, who used to run one of the insulin cartel, one of the three companies that makes up the insulin cartel. So you have to have it automatic or locked in. And then I just will say it's exactly right. This is the starter pistol. This is not the end at all. This is we now have, what we've done is created a tool that did not exist before in law, that now we have, and the policy is tight, and we've worked on it. It was a bare knuckle street fight for years, multiple Congresses. As you know, this has gone on for a long time, and they did drill holes in it. I keep referencing that, but the bones, they couldn't get to them. We protected the bones of them, which basically means that in Medicare Part D and Medicare Part B, they have the ability, the authority, and actually are required to find a maximum fair price and then pay that maximum fair price. Plus, and we fought for less in some regards, because we previously, when we said Medicare negotiation, we were only sometimes we were only saying just get rid of the non-interference clause, which was a clause put into Medicare Part D by this dude who came to Congress to do this at the behest of Pharma. He switched parties so that he could pull this off. He was a Democrat. When the Democrats lost, he just switched to become a Republican. So
was that Billy Towson?
Yeah.
Okay. Who later became the head of
Pharma. Not later, the minute he was and I did my thing. Now I'm getting paid $2 million a year as the head of Pharma, the office where we were standing outside, making sure that they knew that average people just randomly walking by, a large percentage of them hated them for what they do every day. So it is a starter pistol, because we've got a new tool now, and we're going to, exactly what you said, there is a list of drugs. So now my goal is to make that list all drugs, right? The VA does it. So obviously the largest purchaser of drugs should do it, Medicare Part D. And, we'll use every single opportunity. They're called must-pass bills in DC. Right. So any angle, this is what I do. And you know me, Richard. Sometimes we'll only maybe be able to add one drug. Sometimes we'll get a class of drugs. Right. But the whole thing we're going to do is point out the absolute stupidity of saying we are only going to get ripped off on all of these drugs, not these drugs. We're not getting ripped off on these ones. But Pharma, you can keep ripping us off on these drugs. That's ridiculous. And Pharma isn't going to, take this one and just, take the loss and call it a day. They're going to be suing the whole time, right? So It is a dynamic system. We have to fight to expand this just to stay where we are, and to make sure that it does not become toothless through regulations and rules.
They'll also be trying to shift the cost of what they lose over to drugs that aren't on the list, over to the private sector drugs. And so they're going to, they've made it clear that their priority is profits at whatever cost to society. individual lives, anything else, right? So we have to be, if anything, hopefully this is a consciousness raiser for more people as to just how ruthless they are, and we have to be all over them on this one.
Absolutely. And just, like the policies here, the two biggest policy weaknesses of this are high launch prices. So pharma, can say, oh, well, they're going to negotiate this price down. And so to make up for that, we're going to charge $7 million in year one for this drug, right? That they'll try to do that, and we will have to fight them, fight them in every avenue. So public relations, in the press, through executive action, legislatively. And the other one is cost shifting. As you said, they're just going to try to say, okay, well, if I'm going to make less money here, I'm going to make more money here by ripping these people off more. And pharma is going to, try all these things. And what we have to do is literally fight them on each one. And when they do it, so like if they try to cost shift to some group of people, some population, that's who we're going to organize to be like, no. Not only are our drug prices not going to go up, our drug prices are coming down, because if they're paying a fair price and not getting ripped off, and now pharma is coming after me to rip me off for that, like, no, I'm not getting ripped off at all anymore. And people should be outraged. We should be outraged. We didn't get everyone's drug prices lowered. If you're not on Medicare, your drug prices aren't going to be getting lower, right? That's terrible. It's also true that Medicare is the population is the largest purchaser of prescription drugs. So it is an enormous benefit, and it's well targeted. But we need to get out there and say to the private payers as well, the unholy alliance is sort of what I'm worried about. It doesn't seem to be coming true, because they're starting to aim at each other. What we want to do is encourage a giant fight between the insurance industry and the pharmaceutical industry, right? We want the insurance industry to say, wait, why am I paying? Why am I getting ripped off? If Medicare is paying this maximum fair price, then I'm going to pay that too. And in policy land, that is how most pricing decisions are made, like in hospital and across the system. Everyone looks at Medicare and says, what does Medicare pay?
Right.
Okay, well, we're going to pay based on that. That was the whole reason why they said we can't let that happen in drugs, because then we'll stop being able to charge whatever we want, because there'll be an anchor price. And that is what we want. There's no hope in advocacy, right? Like, or policy. We know that it is a fight. We have opposition. They're going to win. There's going to be reversals, but we're going to just have to hit on every front, and use this as a momentum play. And just, I'll sort of end this part with just like, there's also other things we can do and are doing, like public production of insulin in California. That could be, don't stop at insulin, right? Like public production of all drugs makes perfect sense.
Right.
Start with the ones where it's super corrupted, like the insulin cartel, which is actually 3 companies raising prices in lockstep. So they're high enough to kill some people. So, a few people die all the time from the high cost of insulin, or just regularly enough that everyone else is terrified. So they'll spend every penny they have and every penny they can borrow to live.
Right.
People need insulin to live, or their children, their family. That cartel, we have to smash to smithereens. And, just as a point of, we didn't get everything we wanted, the insulin cartel came off pretty scot-free on this. People are helped because people in Medicare have their out-of-pocket costs on insulin capped at $35 a month. We weren't able to get that into the private side. But even that, pharma doesn't lose on that. Pharma comes out even on that, because it just shifts costs to the taxpayers in other places. Like, that's why I want to actually bring down the price of insulin. And public production is something that can do that, right? What Governor Newsom could do, and what he's implementing, is produce insulin, sell it for cost plus, something, some very small amount to just make sure that the system has enough revenue to keep going along with public revenue, and then expand that out into other essential medicines. And then pharma's monopoly is up from new entrants, right? There's going to have to be a lot of work between the states and the feds for that. So we'll have to work at both ends, trying to get federal policy and state policy to align. But I'm predicting that it is a sort of brand new day. Was that Reagan's famous?
Probably. But first of all, Newsom's move I found super encouraging. Not only because it's a great move and it's 20% of the country, but because it shows how the public awareness and mood has shifted, right? That a mainstream politician can do that now, as is really great for me. It shows people are getting the message. Now, I have heard, at least one pharma executive or lobbyist saying, well, this isn't all bad for us because once the Medicare out-of-pocket cap kicks in, more people will be able to afford, will get their medication, get their prescriptions filled, right? Because they can afford it now. So we'll make more sales. So he's kind of counting on those price controls not kicking in for him. So he's saying, hey, more revenue, which when you think about it, just shows how monstrous they are, because between now and 2025, when that kicks in, he'll let him die. But, when that kicks in, hey, it's not bad for business. So, which just reinforces how we have to step in. But I guess the question I was going to ask you was, okay, you mentioned Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, who is considered, I think by most, he's up for re-election now. He's considered by most, I think, to be centrist, middle of the road Democratic senator, who did definitely tweet out a kind of FDR style, I welcome their hatred thing about being hated by Big Pharma, which I love to see too. And I want to see more politicians doing it. But I guess what I'm building up to as a question, Alex, is I'm trying to think of how to put it. What are the vulnerable spots or the acupressure points for politicians in terms of getting them to respond to this? Obviously, knowing that their constituents want it, but so far, an awful lot of them have been able to resist responding to that because those lobbyists are in their face every day, right? So how do we get more and more elected officials? How do we kind of force them to step up as Mark Kelly did? Because, how do we put them in a position where it's either step up or maybe lose your seat?
Yeah, so we want to create the virtuous circle or virtuous cycle of politicians being rewarded for taking good action on pharma. So I will say that electoral politics is where people should focus a lot of their efforts right now. You look at Susan Wild, who's one of the most vulnerable House Democrats in the country. She is literally running on lowering drug prices and expanding Social Security, right? Because she's smart. She knows how to win. That is going to be a really tough race. We want to show that our champions can hang on in a tough cycle, in a tough district by taking on pharma. So, adopting a politician like that and really doing what you can there, phone banking, things, everything that works in electoral politics. Another one is Jamie McLeod Skinner in Oregon, because that's a two-part thing. So first, Kurt Schrader carried the bag for pharma when they were drilling the holes in the bill. And his machinations probably saved pharma, few tens of billions of dollars and hurt, some calculable amount, and it'll be in the millions of people. And because of that, we defeated him. We personally worked as part of a coordinated effort to say that if you carry the bag for pharma, you're going to lose your job. And we did. He's gone. He was primaried by Jamie McLeod Skinner. Now we have to win in the general election. So now we have to have her win against the Republican. Again, she's running on lowering drug prices. She's running on being this anti-pharma element in Congress. And we have to search out for those candidates and then support them in any way that we can. And, you know, that is what Social Security Works does. So you can actually just get a sort of a cheat sheet from Social Security Works PAC. And, you know, John Bowser Bauman is the hardest working man in politics.
He really is, man.
He is. I know a lot of people in politics and no one works as hard as John. He should actually take a break every once in a while. But he's all over the country this cycle. He's going to be highlighting lowering drug prices, getting Medicare, allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. And the truth is, as you know, Richard, Democrats can win on just drug prices, on drug prices alone.
Right.
Medicare negotiation is so well understood by people because it's been in the political spectrum for years and years and years. So that's something that, you know, you can really run on, and you can run against all of the Republicans who voted against it, right? You know, Republican X voted to keep your drug prices sky high. Why does he hate you and your family and your dog, right? Like, the ads write themselves. I'm not that good at an ad writer. I don't know if the dog...
No, but you have the voice for it. You just say, good. And to anyone who's had to give pills to their dog, they'll really relate. So...
But yes, that is what I think the advocacy moment right now is, very electoral. So it is about selling this win and what it means, while at the same time, and I never have any tension on this. Elected officials feel differently about this sometimes. I electorally, we are going to be selling this, and I'm going to be fighting to improve this stuff here in DC at the exact same time. Right? Like, it's not like we're just going to be like, oh, we did it, right? We do not accept that people's insulin costs are still so high that they can die because they can't afford it, right? In this country. I will also say, sorry, I'm bouncing around on this one, but this was actually funny because we were downtown. For people not in the District of Columbia, Pharma is the lobby, the headquarters are in Chinatown. And it's this really nondescript building, but it's in between two very popular places. So there's tons of people just walking, and a lot of them are tourists. And there are all these Europeans who were walking by, and I'd be like, hey, do you want to spend a minute to talk about high drug prices in this country? And they're like, no, I'm from wherever. And I'm like, oh yeah, you have healthcare. How much do your drugs cost? And they're like, that question doesn't make sense to me, because all of our healthcare, we just get it. Or the Irish couple who were like, oh yeah, it's terrible. We have €150. And then the wife was like, per person? And he's like, no, that's for a family. For a year, the maximum amount, 150. And I was like, terrible. I hope you get that to zero, but just the magnitude of the ripoff in this country is really stunning. And again, I think if we can create this cycle where politicians understand that taking on this ripoff just rewards them, and that Pharma's ads against them are actually going to help them, and the magnitude of the ripoff starts becoming apparent to people, I think that we do have a good shot at fundamentally reforming, restructuring the pharmaceutical system in this country.
And you know me, Alex, and you know that I was registered independent for many years, and I'm as lefty as they come, but I will actually throw down for anybody who's running in a primary or a general who steps up in a big way for, bringing down, controlling drug prices, getting Medicare for all, expanding Social Security, any one, two, or three of the above. But it's because I look at politicians, and and sometimes my listeners wonder about this with me. It's because I look at politicians as, means to an end. I don't idealize them. I don't I don't hate them. I don't, some I like, some I, on a personal level that I've met, some I really like and admire, others not so much. But, I think you were there when somebody threatened to punch me out because I likened politicians to one-celled animals that respond to, you give them the stimuli they need, and that person took offense at it. But, to me, if you really want to improve people's lives, this is what you do. And I'm not going to be that cosmic to say I'm going to let people die because they can't afford insulin for some grand vision of the future. I think the most effective way to build for that grand vision of the future is also to save people today. So, that's just my way of contextualizing everything we've been saying about this fight for drug prices and this fight for where it fits on the scale of getting Medicare for all, getting before that getting insulin coverage for all, because that's a horrific situation for anybody to have to deal with. And to me, everything you've said kind of, you may or may not have that philosophy that I have, but everything you've said just fits perfectly with that, which is that we are, we do the work that's before us to make people's lives better at the same time that we hold the vision of making them substantially better. Do you get what I'm driving at?
Yeah, pragmatic solidarity. So I think that it is really a sort of obvious one once you slow down to think about things, that if you're not materially improving people's lives now, you're not going to be able to build the power that you need to change the entire system. And that, Paul Pharma spoke really eloquently on the power of pragmatic solidarity. And I think true in a correct analysis says, when you do that, you literally never lose. It's unfortunately a endless fight against the forces of greed, corruption, and that, sometimes people are like, oh, it's too much, but you don't have to be in the fight all the time. I always say it's not a sprint, nor is it a marathon, it's a relay race. So you do your part when you can. And also I have a few things. Those are my trying to be eloquent ones, but I also think of it as like, we have such a dumb system, and like, yeah, we have to actually play in the dumb system. Like the Senate is dumb. We should abolish the Senate. The
Right.
Senate was a compromise to slave owners, right? And you're like, the English got rid of their House of Lords. It still is a vestigial organ of corruption, but like the Senate, it was modeled on the House of Lords, which the British got rid of. I won't go on too many other
No,
things.
I'm with you.
Electoral college, right? Like all of these things are stupid. But this is the system, and the system is actually just a means for the elite, for the billionaire class, to control the people and basically to rob us with these massive upward redistributions of wealth. I can't remember which economist said it, but once you really truly understand that there is no such thing at all as trickle-down economics, that it's not real, it's the tooth fairy, right? It is not real. Then you will see all of the giant tax cuts for the rich is what they are, which is literally robbing us and giving our money to the already insanely rich, right? That's the battle. And yeah, we do have to play on this dumb battlefield, right? Where corporations can spend unlimited money in politics and all the other things. If you just check out of that, or if you think that you can fight it in your, a system that does not exist but would be better, well, you're not actually fighting the billionaire class. The billionaire class would love people to talk out, all sorts of theory on what could be, while they're just busy robbing us, right? Their eternal optimism and their ability to just keep robbing the people is what drives them forward, and why it's so important that even when you have modest victories against their robbing and pillaging of the people, you celebrate it and you do a little dance on right in front of their office building, or whatever it is, just to let them know that they took a loss on this one. But you take pragmatic solidarity to this is not the end at all, because we obviously aren't even including all drugs. But now you take this, you make people's lives materially better. And Richard, we've spoken on this before, but my vision is this system is completely gone. The system that we have now, where private companies are allowed to restrict access to drugs through price. And we just do a much more rational system built on public health, where the government finances the research and development just like we do now. That all exists right now. That's what we do. We create the drugs together because it's amazing what we can do. But then you remove the step where we hand the patent over to the pharmaceutical corporations. And what that would do here in this country is huge. And around the world, its effect would be saving the lives of millions of people, and making billions of people's lives better, because it is not just a slogan that pills actually cost pennies. Pills cost pennies. It's the greed that costs lives, and you can crush the greed out of the system and just make the pills that people need to live their best lives. That's the system that I want to create. But in order to even get steps closer to that, I have to play in the dumb system that we have right now. So those are that's my take on.
No, I think that's a great conclusion. And, I mean, I think we should keep talking about the system we want and need. In the meantime, if we can help save some diabetic kids, it will have been well worth our while. So with that, Alex Lawson, Executive Director of Social Security Works. We didn't get to go back to gloating more about Big Pharma, but hopefully we'll have years and years to do that. So thanks for all your great work. And as always, thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks, Richard.
And we'll be right back after this. I'm Richard RJ Eskow, and this is the Zero Hour.